Bailey Zappe's evaluation is so tough because he didn't have a real offense around it, but the 3 fumbles were just freaking ridiculous.
Well, look at it this way. He didn't have a real offense around him, and it's hard to say without the benefit of film if some of the sacks that he took, and he did take 4 sacks, and were coverage or he's holding it a bit too long. But even on throws that he made, his timing was off. And I understand your timing is going to be off when your nerves are jangled, when you don't have a lot of protection, and when things aren't going your way. But he was either ahead of guys, behind guys, just not recognizing. He just wasn't crisp. He didn't really have any sort of rhythm to anything that he did on this night. And again, I mean, it shows, in the final numbers, but this was pretty ugly. And it's what can you learn when you're not really playing with anything real? Even with Mac, when he did play in the preseason, he's not playing with the full offensive line in front of him, and so it's actually, it's difficult to really gauge what he's able to do. So it's really hard to judge Zappe, but it's also going to be hard for anybody to come away from this game wondering, did Bailey Zappe cost himself the number 2 job tonight? I don't know if that's the case, because I just don't think you've got any real contenders for it behind him. But it is interesting when you look at Zappe and where he was last year, where he was in the summer, and entering camp with what people thought was at least a fair shot to make his case. Nobody thought he's really, really competing with Mac. But if he came in and lit the world on fire, conversations could have been had, or if Mac didn't have a good camp. Bailey Zappe has not had a good summer overall.
No. So
not just tonight. It's not just tonight.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a good summer.
Yeah, I remember the first practice, he was solid to begin training camp. The first practice where he really started to struggle, I think it was a couple of the sessions after they started with the pads. You saw them bring out paddles. And I remember that was the first practice where I was like, whoa, he's having a really hard time, because you saw there were passes that were getting batted down. There were some that were just completely off the mark. And you're like, all right, what's going on here? Like, he's having a really hard time. And then since then, we really haven't seen him bounce back. There really hasn't been anything in the preseason where he's been able to consistently put plays together. We saw last week he had a lot of really good throws on slants. But today, again, the evaluation is really tough, because these are a lot of guys he's not really going to be playing with, or that are even going to be on the active roster, the 53. There was the one to Malik Cunningham where Cunningham probably should have settled into the zone, as they said on the broadcast, and he didn't, which, if you're just looking at it live, you might think, well, Zappe was inaccurate, but, there's a chemistry thing there. But beyond that, the holding on the ball for too long. Obviously, all the fumbles today weren't good. His accuracy's been kind of all over the place in general. Right. So, not a lot of – earlier in camp, you saw him start to push the ball downfield, and he was being more aggressive, and there was a lot of things to like. But since then, you really haven't seen any consistent days from him where you're like, all right, if – God forbid Mac goes down, Bailey Zappe can step in like he did last year and do well. It's not as clean cut as I think it would be. As we went into this training camp saying, is there maybe not we? I didn't. I don't think most people did, but some people were saying, is there a QB competition? And it hasn't been close at any point in the offseason. And it's kind of discouraging, because he is your top backup. Like Malik Cunningham, for all the talent he has, he's not someone who I think is really going to push for, okay, if we have to put a number 2 quarterback in, it's going to be this guy. So you're hoping that maybe Bailey Zappe finds a rhythm once the season starts or whatever. But not great for him.
You're hoping you never ever have to see him play football again, because you don't ever want to see your backup quarterback in there. But I think, at the very least, for anybody out there, whether you're a Mac guy or not a Mac guy, I always think the argument wasn't whether or not Bailey Zappe was better. It was whether Mac was that much better. And I think that's what people were questioning last year, is like, well, Mac's not setting the world on fire anyway, so are we certain he's the guy? It was a referendum on Mac, not a pro-Zappe sort of thing. But I do think the reality kind of sets in that Bailey Zappe is what he is and who he is. And I think career backup would be a success for him, given the type of quarterback he is and the type of, arm talent he has, and just overall, what he's able to do. He's not great. He holds the ball a long time. He doesn't have a big arm. He's not exceedingly athletic. He just is. So this will at least, I don't mean to take it out on Bailey Zappe. But I do think for the people out there who aren't big Mac people, you at least can take solace knowing that Patriots are entering the season with the best man for the job playing quarterback, whether or not he's able to do it. But I think you can kind of, this summer, I think does put to rest a little bit of the whole Zappe mania. And I don't know, can he, should we give this guy a shot and blah, blah, blah. I didn't think it was ever real to begin with, but I certainly think you can, I think those stories are done with.
Yeah, and I think we should be pretty optimistic about Mac. In just the brief sample size we saw against the Packers, you saw the relationship with Bill O'Brien where he's catering more towards what Mac does well. Like, I wrote about in the offseason, I had a piece on RPOs and empty, how those are things that are going to bring the best out of Mac. Because as he said himself, he wants to be, more of a distributor. He wants to be somebody who gives his playmakers opportunities to do what they do best. And we've seen Bill O'Brien be able to do that and cater to the things that he excelled in college. And I think Mac can be that point guard who really does just put the ball where he needs to. And then you got guys like Kendrick Bourne, who looks like he's about to have a career year. Devontae Parker, obviously not a high target guy, but a big play threat. And Hunter Henry down the middle. I think he has enough complementary weapons. We'll see what happens with the offensive line. Obviously, Riley Reif had an injury today. We're going to have to see what happens there. Don't know when Mike and Winnie and Cole Strange are necessarily going to come back. But if the trenches hold up, I think we are going to see a surprisingly good year from Mac.
CLNS Media Network is powered by FanDuel Sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and start earning bonus bets when you bet on a Super Bowl winner. You can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season.